I'm really excited to introduce you to Benjamin Evans. He's a design lead for Airbnb's anti-discrimination team. He's been a pioneer creating inclusive products and services, and he hails all the way from London across the pond. So let's give him a big welcome and bring Benjamin up to the stage here. All right, man.
Thank you. Good afternoon or evening. So I want to do something a little bit different. We're going to do a quick exercise. It'll only take a minute. And I'm going to ask everyone just to close your eyes for me. I can see who doesn't. There we go. It's great. Now I want you to imagine that your friends have invited you out for a night. They want to meet you at a bar. Some bar you've never been before, so you jump on the subway. You arrive. You're running a little bit late, but you finally get there. You find the place. You get to the door. You open it up. It's packed with people. You can't see your friends. And you have this moment, this low-level bit of panic, because you can't see anyone that you know, that you recognize. You walk forward into the crowd, and then in the distance there, you actually catch a glimmer of someone's face, someone who you recognize, one of your friends. And immediately you feel that wave of relief wash over you. You move forward through the crowd, and there opens up, there is a group of people, all of your friends who you know. They hug you, there's high fives, and you get that wonderful feeling, that feeling like you are accepted, that you are welcome. That's that feeling of belonging. Now, how do you quantify that? How do you design for that? How do you measure that? If you open your eyes for me now, my name is Benjamin Evans, and I'm an inclusive design lead at Airbnb. Now, I lead design for a product team called the Anti-Discrimination Team, and our mission is to reduce discrimination and to build belonging for everyone around the world. And I'm going to show you a really short case study on how we are learning to use business metrics as a way to make the case for more inclusive product designs. Because as a company, we believe in a future where everyone belongs anywhere. We believe in this. But the reality is today that underrepresented groups are being rejected. They're being discriminated against. Even on our platform, I've been rejected by hosts for no other reason than the color of my skin. Now, these are not problems that Airbnb created, but they do manifest on our platform because of the scale at which we operate. You know, in less than 10 years, we've grown to over 80,000 cities. It's 500 million nights. In all of these interactions between our hosts and guests, less than half of them speak the same language. Our community comes from every single background that there could be. And when you bring together this kind of diversity, you get the very best of humanity, but you also get the reality of humanity, that sometimes our differences can lead to rejection. So how do we bridge this gap? How are we planning to take us from this world today where discrimination happens to this future where we all belong everywhere? Well, we believe that it's by being more inclusive in the way that we design and who we design for. But the challenge is that inclusive design is hard. See, as humans, everyone in this room, we all have bias. And our bias leads us to design experiences for people who we believe are like us, who think like us, act like us, look like us. And in an atmosphere like a hyper-growth company, our biases as designers can lead us to design product experiences that disproportionately affect underrepresented groups, or sometimes don't consider them at all. Airbnb is an example of a platform that was initially designed for a fairly specific group. English-speaking, similar socioeconomic classes, predominantly able-bodied. But what happens if you have a disability? Anne Diaz, one of our lead researchers, uncovered that guests with disabilities were really struggling to use Airbnb. See, if you have a disability, you may require the need of the use of special features, a home to have certain accessible features, like if you have a disability, that means you need a wheelchair, that means you need to use a wheelchair, you may need a ramp. The home may need to have step-free access. The bathroom may need to have grab rails. And the way the platform was initially designed, there was no way for a host to identify whether or not their home had these features, and there was no way for a guest to actually search for homes that had these features. So you can imagine a scenario where someone has traveled around the world planning for this amazing trip, and they get to the front door and they can't get in it because there are steps. So Anne led a team and research paired together with design to try and ideate a solution. And it was a multi-step flow. On one side, a host would be able to categorize their home according to the accessible features they had. And on the other side, a guest, any guest, would be able to search for features that meet the needs that they have. Now, it's relatively simple in design, but it's a big project beyond the scope that any one product team can do. We needed a cross-company collaboration. And so the first challenge was, well, how do we get this prioritized? There's a challenge within the inclusive design area that there is a lack of data. So few companies invest in inclusive design, it's very hard to prove the value in metrics and business impact. So we did what research and design typically do. We started with empathy, using qualitative studies and user stories to try and explain, like, what is it like to shop this idea around, this new interface, with all of the different teams who would need to be involved in order to bring this to life. Now, there was initially some resistance. And I want to be clear on this. It's not because anyone disagreed with this on principle, but it's because our company is in hyper growth. We're expanding in every single vertical simultaneously. We have teams who are dealing with different languages, different user groups, different market segments. All of these are conflicting, and this is an idea that has never been done before. No one has sought to solve a problem with inclusive design on the scale that we're talking about. And as I said, although the design is simple, it's still an incredibly complicated back-end problem to solve. We're asking our community to recategorize all of their homes at scale. And that's a huge amount of hours, putting aside the amount of hours it would take to create and the millions of dollars it would create to fund. We realized that empathy in this instance just was not enough. Although it is design superpower, we needed to do more. We had to build alignment. And so over time, the teams, the various individuals who were working on this, started to try and find different ways of making the case to different teams. There's a quote from Carl Grove, who is an accessibility consultant, that really best embodies how we began to think about this, which is that there are only three things that make change in business. That something will make money, it will save money, or it will reduce risk. And so we thought, well, what if instead of relying on empathy and user stories, what if we began to find a way to align this with business goals? When we look at things like making money, we can see that the market for people who have physical and cognitive constraints, well, there are over 1 billion individuals in the world right now who have some kind of impairment. This travel segment within this is growing at a rate of 22% year on year, which is outpacing other travel segments. When we're looking at saving money, well, if a guest travels across the world and has a poor experience, as I highlighted earlier, well, our customer support team, they try their very best to make things right. And that can go anything from being on the phone to make sure this individual feels heard and supported, all the way through to finding you new accommodation, even if that's not with Airbnb. So that's a cost center. So if we can find a way to better meet expectations, we can reduce the need to have this kind of support. We also realize that if you have a good experience with Airbnb, then there's less likelihood that you will churn. You're more likely to come back. And in terms of reducing risk, well, every underserved market that there is within our user segments presents an opportunity for our competitors. And we see this time and time again. If you don't meet the needs of one group, your competitors will. There's also a PR and brand cost to this. Whenever people have a bad experience on our platform, they share it publicly and overtly. This has a real brand impact, especially if we are talking about creating a future where anyone can belong anywhere. So over time, the teams restructured this case, of course, still starting with empathy, so that everyone knew the problem we were solving was rooted in a human need that was expressed. But now started to build on a business case on top of that. showing how solving this need would help increase our total addressable market, that it would increase repeat bookings, that it would save money with support costs while reducing customer churn, that it was also reduce risk by giving us that competitive advantage and building more and more brand alignment. And then, of course, we connected everything within our mission, that we're aiming to build belonging for everyone. And we're not building belonging for everyone unless we are building belonging for everyone. Over 40 people actually ended up coming together from various different disciplines. This started from a single set of insights and one researcher with drive. 40 people across product, design, engineering, across all different parts of the business came together to build this. And around about 12 months ago, we launched the first version of these filters. And it's early days, we'll admit, but already we've had over 2.7 million searches within our first year that are using one or more of these filters. Oh, cool. We actually have a number of new partnerships with civil rights groups. Previously, they were quite critical of us, and rightly so, because we were not serving the needs of their communities. But now they are actively seeking us out because they see that we are trying our very best to make sure that we are including as many people as possible. And most importantly, more people feel that they are part of our community. And this is something that is hard to measure, just like that feeling at the beginning, but it means that we are moving one step closer towards that mission, that vision where anyone belongs. And so in terms of takeaways, like, how do you make the business case for inclusive design? Well, I would always say start with empathy. Of course, I'm biased, I'm a designer within that. But we should always start and ensure that the stories that we tell are rooted in a human need. But when I say empathy in this context, I don't just mean empathizing with your users and different user groups. I also mean empathizing with your internal teams. Having open discussions where you understand what are their KPIs, what are their priorities. Because understanding where their goals are really gives you that insight that you need to begin creating a strong foundation that makes the case for your design. We also, as design, should own the impact. Now, although empathy is usually the starting point, it should not be the only way that we communicate the value of our work. Don't just show the human at the center of your work, show the dollars. Like, business is based upon dollars and doing good in the world, and there should be no reason why we're ashamed to admit that the work we do can make money while doing a lot of well in the world. And then lastly, as designers, we often hate it when people say that our work is just pixels. But if we want people to really appreciate the true value, we can't just show them the finished product and expect them to get on board. Invite as many people from as many different backgrounds into your process so that they come on the journey and arrive at the same conclusion. Now, some of you in this room still may be thinking, but mission, our company's mission is not belonging. And I would disagree with that. See, every single one of us is trying to make sure that as many people as possible feel included in the products and services that we create. And as designers, if we want our work to be valued and for it to solve the needs of the users that are part of our community, we have to be willing to bridge that gap between the solutions that we design and the needs and the impact that businesses need in order to thrive. Thank you. Thank you.